Oh my darling, oh my darling, oh my darling party line. Oh, I never will forsake thee, for I love this life of mine.
Hello and welcome to episode 4 of The Party Line. You're here with me, Annika.
Hi, Omar here.
Geordie here.
This podcast was produced on Indigenous land that was stolen, was never ceded, and we stand in solidarity with our Indigenous comrades in their struggles against racism and capitalism. Welcome to The Party Line. This episode, we want to talk about a lot of different things. Omar did an interview with Brian Bean, who's a socialist comrade from Chicago, and they discussed a lot of different stuff, but we wanted to talk a bit about what's going on with the Mamdani campaign in New York.
Big issue right now, election coming up.
We also thought it was important to talk about Albanese and Rudd kissing Trump's ass in Washington.
Yep.
And we were all at a anti-fascist protest in Melbourne, in Naarm, on the weekend, and the police and media response to that has been pretty nuts. So they're all the things that we want to talk about today. But I think we have to acknowledge something, which is that Jordan is obviously very online.
Thanks, Annika.
And so that means that he gets, attacked by people online a lot, like Nazis, whatever. But something quite repulsive is happening on Twitter at the moment.
It's disgusting, really.
Which is that people are posting a lot of nice stuff about you.
Some of us, we're all equal, but some of us are more equal than others. Like, me and Annika are not getting that much fan mail, but yeah.
Separate but equal.
So what is going on, Jordan? Why are all these people posting nice stories about you?
So, like over a year ago, I bumped into Sarah and I wanted to watch the Bulldogs, and we were like, we should leave the house one time. So
Bold plan.
yeah,
Get off the internet.
right? And we're like, we want to go somewhere different, like not to the local pub. So we're like, oh, let's go to a different pub. And we went to a place called the Middle Park Hotel, which, like,
A very plebeian
exactly,
venue, I'm sure.
yeah,
Lots
yeah,
of working class
lots of
people
100%.
hanging
Like
out.
that's where the proletariat lives. And like I'm not sure why, but we decided to go there. We got there. We're like, we'll have dinner. We'll watch the footy. Pints were $17.
Bargain.
It's incredible.
Thanks, Dan Andrews.
Like the food minimum like food thing was like $30-something. So we're like, okay, we'll get some chips,
That's pocket money.
have a drink, and watch the footy. And then so we're there sitting there watching the footy. I think it was like Bulldogs in Melbourne or something like that. And there was just like everyone was in a suit. Everyone looked like a real estate agent. And this guy was there, and he was like quite drunk with a bunch of his mates who all looked the same. And like, I'm just sitting there with my wife having, some chips. I don't think we were married then, actually. And this guy comes up and he's like drunk, and was like, I hate you, but I respect what you're doing with the housing stuff and whatever. And then like, we were both like, oh, that's a bit weird.
That's really sweet, yeah.
Anyways, so, over a year later, this guy tweets, I think it was yesterday or the day before, and he was like, I have a personal story about purple pingers, and then went on this big rant about like, I used to like what he did on housing, but he's become way too far left and like an anarchist and,
Yeah, he's an anarchist.
Exactly. Moved away from housing, and then, but didn't mention like what I'd moved to, and like what he was getting at is, number one, he has a personal story about me. That was that he bumped into me at the Middle Park Hotel one time.
Shame.
Agreed.
Riveting story, yeah, wow.
And then number two, he doesn't like now that I have linked the struggle against, the housing crisis with the rise of fascism and being anti-genocide. He's like, that's too far. Right. That'd be ridiculous.
And did this guy get his 1,000 likes or whatever?
He got quite a few likes. But then
Must have been very exciting for him, yeah.
Just like glad for him.
Well, I think the main point is that people should stop.
Being
People should
nice.
stop.
So in response to this, people started sharing like, I have a personal story about purple pingers, and like most of it's like quite funny. Most of it's like copy paste to stuff like I was a Navy SEAL, blah 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 blah. But then like people are sharing really nice things about when we bumped into each other.
What we're going to do is we're going to test how many listeners we actually have. I want everyone listening to this right now to go on Twitter and post something nice about Annika de Manueli.
I think that's fair.
Mr. Manueli, what is your Twitter handle?
I don't know.
Oh, well, look her up.
Yeah, you're on Twitter.
I think it's just Annika de Manuel.
Yeah. So everyone, we want to get Annika trending.
Trend me.
But importantly, a lot of it has to be fake.
Yeah.
Okay, well...
Coolest story wins a prize.
Yeah. Personal story. Did I make you cry in student politics sometime? We'll find out.
Definitely.
We'll do a shout out on the next pod.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that we have a lot to talk about in terms of Anthony Albanese and our good friend, Mr. Ratfucker himself.
Rudd, you're talking about?
Yeah. And so I wanted to play
Kevin 07.
a video.
Go ahead.
There's been concern in Australia that it's taken 9 months to get this meeting. Have you had any concerns with this administration, with the stance on Palestine, climate change, or even things the ambassador said about you in the past, the Australian ambassador?
I don't know anything about him. I mean, if he said bad, then maybe he'll like to apologize. I really don't know. Did an ambassador say something bad about him? Don't tell me. I don't. Where is he? Is he still working for you?
Yeah.
You said bad?
Before I took this position, Mr. President.
I don't like you either. I don't, and I probably never will. Go ahead.
So the thing that I find the most revolting about this whole affair is the way that Anthony Albanese is like so happy to play into this game of like, oh yeah, he's sitting down there, Mr. President. Like, you know, he's so...
Before I took this position, Mr. President. Pathetic.
It's unbelievable. And like the Radio National, the preeminent news radio platform in Australian media, the 8 o'clock news, which is probably the most listened to one, the headline story was clash between Kevin Rudd and Mr. Trump, and would the Australia-US alliance possibly survive this high drama? And it's like, oh my God. Like we said last week, how much they personalize politics. I mean, this is just like classic example.
Yeah. And then, I mean, it just goes on and on and on. Like, then Albanese's been very active on Twitter, and he put up a post of him and Marco Rubio with the comment on it saying that the US and Australia they've both been forces for good.
For over a century.
And
that's what most people think about when they think about America, I think.
Yeah.
Force for good in the world.
Yeah, and it's
Also, remember when
international relations.
Remember when Marco Rubio was like the far-right extremist in American politics? Like,
Yeah.
God, those were good days.
But to Albanese, he's just a kind teddy bear, and together they, create positive change in society. Like, do you think that, the people through Latin America thought that America was a force for good? Do you think people in Vietnam thought America was a force for good? Afghanistan, Iraq? It's just this continuation of the Labor Party's approach to Albanese, what's been going on for over a year now, which is, nearly a year, is just constant sycophantic love fest over Donald Trump, who's literally ushering in authoritarian politics in a way that's never been seen or has been seen before. But you know what I mean? It's just...
It's unprecedented. I mean, there were literally 7 million people on the streets of America on the weekend protesting against Donald Trump. And our government is like fating him as if he was some kind of god on earth.
And obviously Albanese's purpose of going to Washington was to shore up the AUKUS deal, to make sure that Australia was going to get these nuclear-powered submarines. They've signed this resource deal, which everyone's heralding as this amazing masterstroke that Albanese was able to carry off. But what it means is that Australia is even more intimately linked in and tied with a far-right state that wants to push the boundaries of imperialism. We're entering into a pretty fucked up world, and Albanese is getting us closer and closer and closer to America.
I mean, the braying of the political class about is AUKUS going to survive or not. And there was quite a good article, I can't remember where I read it, making the point that Australia's building America a submarine base for free. Like we're paying for it, and we're giving them billions of dollars to improve their manufacturing process. And we're going to overpay if we ever see the submarines. We're going to overpay for them. Like America was never going to tear this deal up. And the fact that the Australian elite are so desperate to campaign for this deal, act like it's the most important thing in the world, just indicates how desperate they are to keep Australian imperialism aligned with the US, which therefore magnifies our power more than would otherwise be the case, because when countries deal with us, they know they're really dealing with the Americans. And of course, what all it does is spend money on things that should be going to health and education and housing and all the other stuff we know we need on war, but also makes us a target in any future conflict between China and the US, because we'll become basically an American airbase.
Like all this stuff about, all the commentary about like, will they tear up this deal now, is so impossible, because if you look at the deal, there is no clawback term in the contract, which means like if Donald Trump wanted to, at the end of the deal, after all the submarines are produced, hypothetically, after they've taken all of our, minerals and whatever, not that part is confirmed yet or anything, it's just a vibe, he can say no, like he has to sign off, he can say no after all of this money has been paid to America and we don't get any money back. Like that's how the deal is made. So why the fuck, if you are Donald Trump, why would you tear up that deal? It's free money. It's
about America's sort of forward strategic plans, which is they're trying to shore up their allies for, the coming imperial conflicts that will dominate our world over the next couple of decades. So this is it actually is an important deal for America, because we're in the Asia Pacific. Some of their big, like China, one of their key imperial enemies, Asia Pacific.
Regional interest.
They want...
I think you mean the Indo-Pacific, because we don't want to talk about Asia anymore. Yeah.
And so then what America get out of this is, the continuation of their army base and spy base in Pine Gap. They get to put their nuclear-powered submarines and submarines that will hold potentially nuclear warheads.
And B-52s as well.
In our ports. And a place to put their soldiers when they're training them and the like. So America has a long history over decades and decades of creating army bases all around the globe. Of course they want to continue that.
Especially when we're paying for it. Australian taxpayers are subsidising the American military machine. So that's one big aspect of it. The other thing is the minerals. I mean, the minerals deal is really explicitly about bypassing China. And China's not some innocent in all this. Like they've just recently said they're going to try and control every single part that's produced using Chinese rare earths, which is basically everything, because they produce and process like 90% of all rare earths on the planet. So that's an aggressive imperial move. But then the response by the Australian ruling class is we can fill this need. We can be your production line.
Yeah.
And it ties us even... the military thing's happening, and then this ties us economically into this whole geopolitical block. And this morning on Radio National, I think it was one of the Labor ministers was being interviewed, and he was being asked, like, do we have, like, is this production process like just an independent kind of normal capitalist one, or is it all tied to the US? And he refused to answer, basically, because if the US is going to invest here, they're going to want to have control, over where these things go. So this is all about deepening. And it's quite explicitly so. But for the left-wing people, we need to understand that and be really, really vigorously opposed. And the thing is, like, the submarines, it's an issue for the distant future from Trump's point of view. So why would he get involved? What he wants is the money now.
Yeah. God willing, inshallah, Trump won't make it to that point.
He certainly won't.
I think the other point that's, important is that Australia is actively pursuing this, because part of the way that people have understood Australian imperialism in the past is that we're a lapdog of the US, or we're too tied to, we're dominated and controlled by American imperialism. But Australia has pursued this from the get-go. They want to be a key part of the sort of American imperial engine. Australia has a history of dominating our close neighbours, taking control of minerals and resources in the ocean. And so Australia wants to position itself as key to those like production lines. The fact that we produce all of the iron ore makes us quite central to the sort of imperial networks. And then they want us to become, you know, the way that the government sort of talks about Australia is not just, you know, as a middling power, but like as a sort of a powerful sort of middle power. And so they want to, the Australian government, the Australian ruling class want to expand Australian imperial power. They're not just sort of blindly following America. They're saying, we want to be really tight with America. We want to be key to the imperial conflicts that come.
Yeah, I mean, and we're seeing this impacting on working class people already in the university sector, where the Americans invest quite a lot of money. And, you know, recently Trump did that whole survey where he asked universities, anyone applying for American grants or on existing grants, like, are you doing anything in relation to trans rights? Do you mention climate change anywhere? And if so, you're going to be cut off. That led to people losing a lot of funding and probably, if it hasn't happened already, a lot of jobs being lost in the research sector. So the more that Australia becomes part of this global nexus, while America is shifting to the far right, we're going to see more of this. So, you know, this can lead to attacks on workers, universities. If there's manufacturing processes, you know, the union rights of those workplaces will become, you know, very much under the oversight of the Americans, because they'll be very much invested in making sure the supply of goods is regular. So this is all a very dangerous precedent.
Yeah. And Ashley Smith has written, who's an American socialist, has written about the sort of rise of the new McCarthyism in the United States. The way that universities have just become a place where talking about issues that go beyond the scope of what Donald Trump thinks that you should be talking about, you get fired, you get expelled. And so the universities are like a very important sort of ground zero for clamping down on political resistance and political opposition to Trump's regime.
Yeah, I think something that was like bugging me like during all of this was like, we are just becoming so tied to these interests, and like it's obviously all bad. There's no, you don't need like a socialist analysis to be like, this is bad, full stop. But while we're being like, our leaders are being sycophantic to Donald Trump, like there's always this random threat of like things like tariffs and shit like that. We had like Australia Post stop shipping stuff to America because it was so unpredictable and all that kind of stuff. And then our leaders' response would be like, "Oh, Mr. President, like, I don't want to be mean to you. We're lovely," and all that kind of. It is just insane. It's absolutely insane.
And the fact that the Australian government is sucking up to Donald Trump actually sends a message to all the freaks we're protesting against on the streets that actually your politics is legitimate. It's mainstream.
Yeah. And we want you to be friendly to us.
Exactly. I mean, how can Albanese really oppose the far right in Australia when he is best friends with their global Führer? You know, like it is a contradiction. And I think that it's no coincidence that we're seeing the largest and most consistent and repeated far right mobilizations in Australia now in response to Trump, because he is the far right's dream, and they're inspired, and that inspiration is being legitimized by the friendly relations that our government has.
And it's a process that's mirrored in the United Kingdom as well. Keir Starmer is, you know, even more sort of going down the path of the legitimization of these sort of racist, anti-immigrationist policies. And so everywhere around the world, these social democratic centrist parties have no way of responding to the growth of the far right, because they, as Omar's explained, they are totally tying themselves to the global representative of this far right.
But hey, what do you guys think about whether Rudd should remain the ambassador to America?
This is the important question.
Well, he should just be sort of hung up for all of his other crimes. Hey, tax on refugees, etc. But, you know, he's a very worldly guy. You know, he can speak Mandarin, so...
That is very impressive.
Yeah.
And he's good at shaking sauce onto chips.
God. So lame. Sorry to our listeners who are like below the age of 20.
Look it up.
Don't.
I think the other thing that, going back to the question of nuclear and the nuclear-powered submarines, because there actually has been this, people talk about the shift in the Overton window, blah, blah, blah. But nuclear is one of those questions where there used to be really solid politics. You opposed nuclear power, you opposed nuclear weapons. But sort of amongst especially like young men at universities, there's been a sort of increasing sort of interest and support for nuclear and nuclear power. And I think it's been lost as a question that it's just clear what your position is.
Yeah, it's really interesting actually, because like we saw that even like this election with the nuclear stuff, there was a big, like the ETU and a bunch of other blue collar unions put in like millions of dollars into it, like no nuclear this election. Like it wasn't a big issue. They just had nothing else to campaign on because Labor was attacking the CFMEU, but they didn't want the Liberals either. So they're like, we'll choose this nothing campaign about nuclear. But then when Troy Gray, the head of the ETU in Victoria, would speak about why they're opposing nuclear, the only response he ever gave was that we had our members come back after seeing the horrors of World War II and that's why we oppose nuclear.
I mean, I don't think that's the worst. Like,
It's
not sufficient.
Exactly.
But it's a good
It's
starting
fine.
point. And it kind of connects to the history. Like, the workers' movement, digging uranium is dangerous. You get irradiated. Processing it is dangerous. And then its uses are dangerous for obvious reasons. So, like, I agree that the union leadership these days have lost the politics. I mean, in the 80s, Australian unions went on strike to try and control, and the left-wing ones to end uranium mining. And that was a fight against Bob Hawke and Labor. So there are these traditions, and I think it's a start. But among younger people, for some reason, nuclear is seen as clean and like modern. It's not a modern technology at all. It's almost 100 years old now. It's extremely toxic.
Yeah.
Like, it's way more toxic than a coal plant. It's not visible, the toxicity, but in terms of the longevity of the toxicity and the risk to humanity, depleted uranium is a far worse material. It's totally, there's no way of processing it to make it safe. It lasts for millennia, and then meltdowns like Fukushima. So it's a really weird perception, but I think it does appeal to the sort of like, young, fairly ignorant, but like technologically optimistic kind of engineering students at universities who think they can control everything with, totally abstracted from the way the economy actually works.
Yeah, and to kind of confuse the point that this is like any push for nuclear is just an attempt to delay renewable energy.
Exactly.
Like that's the point of it. It's not because it's a good, viable, source that we can use right now. It's like this will at least take 30 years.
That's right.
and we can keep using coal in the meantime.
Exactly.
And then I think the way that nuclear is sort of becoming more normalized or popularized, I think allows for this idea that, well, tactical nuclear warheads will potentially be something that, the United States decide to use in future wars. And Donald Trump is at the moment talking more and more about nuclear weapons, and it's another sort of dangerous sort of slide into things that are going to fuck us up.
Yeah, I don't know if people know what a tactical nuke is, but it's like this modern type of nuclear weapon that instead of destroying a whole city, destroys like a few kilometers.
Yeah,
and so they're campaigned for by like the military industrial complex by saying, oh well, this is less damaging. But actually what it does, and Obama invested a lot in these and phased out some of the old mega ones to replace them with these. But actually it lowers the threshold for use, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're going to destroy a whole city forever, well, they've thought a lot
Big
about
call.
doing that. It's a big call. Whereas if you're just going to destroy like a battlefield forever, well,
yeah, anyone can do that.
Yeah.
That's fine. You
So-
can do that on COD.
Exactly. So it actually, well, I don't know what cut is, but it it actually makes it much more likely they get used.
Definitely.
Well, maybe we should take a listen to a bit of Omar's interview with Brian Bean.
Before we do that, what is COD?
It's
Call of Duty. Video game.
Oh, the shooting game.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I didn't know that. Sorry. Carry on.
Again, sorry for our... Actually, I'm not even going to say sorry for our younger listeners because, like, people in their fucking 40s play COD. So.
Yeah, sorry. Shooting games were never my thing. Yeah.
What games did you play, Omar?
Like
Tetris or something?
No. Nah. I play mind-numbing games like that I do while I'm in meetings.
Like Bejeweled?
Yeah, Tetris.
Yeah, stuff like that.
Okay, well, before Omar rudely interrupted me.
Sorry.
So Omar spent yesterday morning talking with Brian Bean. Brian is a long-term socialist from the United States. He is based in Chicago. He's been active in campaigns for Palestine, against the racist American police. And Omar chatted to him. We're going to release a special bonus episode where you can listen to the full interview that Omar did with Brian. But for this episode, I mean, it's a really good interview. But for this episode, we wanted to listen to some snippets from that interview where Brian and Omar discussed the question of Mamdani in New York.
Yeah, it's an important topic. I mean, a lot of people have been inspired by his victory in the Democratic primary and have seen his videos. You know, we know the American internet sort of dominates everything. And Brian is a long-term activist who dealt with a similar thing in Chicago a few years earlier. So, yeah, I think his insight is really useful into this.
I mean, Zohran Mamdani is a DSM member who served as the New York State Assemblyman, so their state Congress, since 2021, I believe. And his campaign has had a meteoric rise. I mean, he went from a nobody to stomping everyone in the Democratic primary. And I think what it represents is, I mean, just the appeal of a left-wing vision. And I'll put an asterisk in that and come back to it a little bit. But it comes in the wake of the massive demonstrations around Palestine, of which he has been before generally quite good around. And so I think that the radicalism around that has flowed into that. And he's also just like a normal person, which is so different than the like zombies and goons and robots of typical politicians. And so I think it represents a left-wing aspiration.
I think the point that one of the things that fed into Mamdani's rise was the global movement for Palestine and the way that that was reflected in New York. New York was an epicenter of a whole series of the different moments of the Palestine movement in the United States. They had the student campus occupations, the encampment movement, where the New York universities were quite central to that, and where there was, you know, the New York police dragged students out of their universities. And then also the Jewish Voice for Peace groups
very strong there.
were really, they occupied train stations. They did a Passover protest where they occupied city blocks, you know. So there's been a rise in this question of Palestine. New York has obviously got a lot of Jewish residents in it, but that break inside the Jewish community was really strong as well in New York, where a lot of the young liberal Jewish residents broke from the position, which is that they should support Israel, and understood what was, what this moment actually represented, which was genocide. And that's politicized people, I think, those processes.
Yeah, totally. I mean, Jews in America are very much on the left, you know, broadly speaking, and sort of always have been. And the contradiction between being a leftist and being pro-Israel has just exploded in the last 2 years. And they've been really core to the movement there. I mean, the thing about Mamdani is like he's got a working class history, Muslim family, like not some upper elite, you know, whatever. Very charismatic, very socially, you know, very social media adept. And the policies he was talking for have really caught people's attention, you know, like dealing with the cost of living issues, Palestine, the police, racism, etc. So, you know, he made quite an impact in America, and the fact that he won the primary sort of electrified people. And, you know, even in Australia, you know, comrades and Victorian socialists were talking about it, and I'm sure others around Australia. So it's got that moment of positivity, which I think is important to relate to But then on the other hand, as we kind of go into, like, we've seen this kind of play out before, you know, these kind of figures and the trap of trying to work within the system.
Yeah, and we can already see that start to happen, and he hasn't even been elected yet, apologising to the NYPD for calling them racist and stuff like that. I think it's a really difficult conversation to have, because it is positive, like overall, generally, that something like that's happened, but like we know how this ends, like we know what happens here, and that conversation is quite a difficult one to have, I reckon.
Yeah, because, well, Brian is in Chicago, where there was the Brandon Johnson mayoral campaign. Brandon Johnson was part of a left-wing, or sort of tied to the unions and social movements. There was a big, strong campaign for him to be elected mayor there. And then within the first year of him being in the mayoral position, gave more money to the police. There was controversies around support for Israel, putting the cops on homeless populations to move them out of different sections of the city. And so a lot of the people who are involved in the campaign to get him elected, quite rightly felt betrayed by that process. And this is something that we've seen with also, AOC, who was less connected in with, I would argue, less connected in with left-wing social movements from the get-go. She was a bit of a different political background.
She was a legal intern with the Kennedys.
But, when she was elected, she was sort of seen as this left-wing firebrand. And, what did she do? She said the thing about how... First off, the detention centres were like illegal concentration camps or something to that effect. And then when Joe Biden got elected, it was regional processing centres, which is just disgraceful.
And just her voting record is very much that of a fairly orthodox Liberal Democrat. And it's the pressure of working within this Big Tent. I mean, the only reason to get elected is to, from their perspective, is to make change. And you're only one rep, so you got to work with all these other Democrats, and these Democrats are corporate scum. So then if you're going to get anything through, you have to compromise with them. And so, year after year, time goes by and you find yourself voting for, Iron Dome projects and stuff like that, which AOC has.
But it's not even just, as years go by.
Oh, yeah.
Because with the like Jordan pointed to, he's apologised to the police, but also he has pledged not to use the phrase globalise the intifada anymore, which is, pretty terrible considering, as we started with, the part of the reason why people were so, drawn to his campaign was because of his participation in the movement for Palestine.
Yeah, which is like a more direct betrayal, like already. And he hasn't been elected yet.
Well, part of the thing is he's not running to be a random representative in a Congress or a parliament. He's actually running to be in the executive. He wants to run
the NYPD. City.
And the NYPD, I was going to say, like, you're actually the boss of the cops. You're not just a commentator on the police. And so the pressure, therefore, to manage the budget, keep them happy, avoid a big strike of police, which is, good. Crime goes down when the police are on strike, but not from a politician's point of view. So you can see the pressures mount much more quickly and aggressively when you're running for executive office, which is the point Brian makes in the interview, because the left often focuses the critique merely on the fact that he's running through the Democrats. But any party, like socialists don't want to
run capitalism, in periods where like radical change is not on the cards, just in everyday moments. Like we want to end capitalism and elections can be part of that, but running for executive office is not that. It's taking over and managing and trying to do that in America where the government's finances are shit, where you have very little power over taxation as a mayor. So you're basically reliant on the state Democratic Party going with you, and they're not going to. Yeah. And you're running Wall Street.
Yeah.
So it's literally where Wall Street is. So while the working class of New York is one of the most liberal in America, the rich of New York are some of the most powerful. Like the New York Times, which is to the right of many Democratic politicians even today. Like this is the Democratic establishment. So he needs to be their ally, and that's why he's walking back.
I think that the campaign for Mamdani and the way that for his the race in the primary. It was quite remarkable.
Definitely.
Like 50,000 people, I think, participated in the ground campaign for Mamdani. They had people door knocking, doing posters, street rallies, campaign meetings, and I think that what that shows is that there is an audience and there is an appetite for more working class politics in America and in, you know, one of the most important centers of it in New York. And people it wasn't just that Mamdani was sort of responding to this feeling, but he did put forward arguments to people as well. He made the argument that America is a wealthy society and the billionaires have had it good for so long, and it's time for, you know, ordinary people to get their own back. And so it does show you that if there's people in America who are willing to take a lead to make political arguments, to make more left-wing arguments, then they can actually win large layers of people behind them to support them. And so his primary victory was, you know, basically no one thought it was going to happen. And then he got all of these key areas across NYC. But then where does that go? You know, where does he take all of the people those 50,000 people who campaigned for him?
Well, then they start campaigning for the Congress, you know, the New York State Congress, so that he can get what he wants through. And then, you know, the cycle goes on. And that's the problem, that these figures, they bring, I kind of say this in the interview, like they bring the like broad left ideas into the mainstream, but then they also bring the actual left in terms of the people on the left and on organizations. They bring them into the mainstream as well, but in a backwards way. Rather than them pulling the mainstream to the left, they actually get pulled in. And we saw that with the Sanders campaign. Like, you know, the DSA rode that campaign and grew a lot, but it's subsequently become a very conservative organization that despite some posturing at conferences, basically does nothing to intervene into American politics and shape it in any kind of radical way. And most of the radical left have abandoned it for good reason and are very critical of it. So and we saw that with Corbyn as well in the UK. Like, a lot of people were hopeful about Corbyn, but he was so committed to the Labour Party, and he still is. He refuses to organise his bloody party properly. You know, but he was so committed to Labour, he refused to expel a single right-wing MP, which is, you know, most of them. He didn't even support mandatory reselection, which is so. And it all comes back to, if you want to get into power through these shortcuts, riding an existing pro-capitalist organisation as a socialist or as a social democrat, then you have to compromise on everything fundamental, because the right wing don't compromise with us. It's not as if when there's a right wing Labor government, they ask the socialists, what do you guys want? But when socialists work within these institutions, we have to ask them what they want, which is why, you know, we don't support doing that. Maybe we could skip to the one about the protests that happened on the weekend.
I mean, their size, it seems pretty realistic that what the press has put forward, that it's the largest single day protest in U.S. history at 7 million is probably the case, which passes the day of the Women's March, which was Trump's first inauguration. And so I think its size and scale, it's massive. Like in Chicago, our downtown was completely overwhelmed. It was one of those demonstrations where you don't even know actually where the march is and where it ends. You're just in this mass of people the whole time. Not only that, but there was like small rallies in every neighborhood of the city that was like operating at the exact same time as the other demonstration. So it was like there was this massive hundreds of thousands of people downtown, and then people in their own neighborhoods just coming out to like the street to rally. And they occurred in small towns too. So like the map of the spread of the protests reflects, you know, a general dissatisfaction and resistance against the Trump agenda. And I think in that it is wholly positive.
Yeah, I mean, the sheer scale of the movement is impressive. And I think it's easy to feel when you watch the news and you see Trump talking whatever shit he's talking this week, to feel like that represents all of America. And obviously it represents a very important part of America, the ruling class of America, and the wealthy. But there's also a working class and a poor in America. And actually Trump has very low approval ratings, and, you know, less than 50%. and especially in the cities, which Brian talks about, the cities are all Democrat, and that's where the working class live overwhelmingly. And so to see them mobilized is really positive, and again shows that if a lead is given, then people will take action.
I wanted to raise something about this because, well, Omar, you're not very online, so you might have missed some of this. But I don't know, Johnny, maybe you've seen it. There's people in the American left who have been really critical of the No Kings protests.
No, I did say that, yeah.
So they make this argument that the No Kings protests are just liberal parades, you know, people with their signs, and they don't know anything about the world, and we actually need a general strike, and why aren't you a communist?
People said the same thing about the Sunday protests for Palestine in Melbourne.
Yeah. And it's this holier than thou attitude, which is an abstentionist attitude to politics as well. So what I mean by that is these people who think that they understand the world look down upon ordinary people who are angry and pissed off about the fact that there's a fascist in government. They look down on their nose at these people, but then decide to not participate in politics at all. Whereas I would think there's 7 fucking million people on the streets in the United States. You should go talk to them about why they need to continue to be involved in organisation, about why, you know, Donald Trump is symptomatic of a broader system of capitalism. You try and actually win people to a political argument. But too many people on the left, I think, in America at least, and around whatever in Australia, have no approach to actually trying to build something positive that could achieve, you know, some meaningful kind of change.
And like at the end of the day, they're not wrong. We do need a general strike, but if you look at how you achieve that, it's not by telling 7 million people who actually want to get out and do something that what they're doing is incorrect.
Yeah, I think it's this frustration at the pace of things, and we saw the same thing in the Palestine movement, as I said. But to be a serious activist is thinking about not just where we want to be, but how do we get there, right? And the small steps that it takes to go from nothing happening to a protest to maybe something, an occupation, a strike, a general strike, is the dream. And so I think that methodology gives you some insight that, yes, you have to celebrate the fact that there is a mass movement. I mean, it's not as if America has rallies of 7 million people every week. They are more common these days, these huge protests, thanks to social media and the radicalization that's going on. But it's still quite an important event. Brian makes the point in the interview that the left, like, it's easy for us, or we wouldn't do it, but that section of the left, it's sort of envy. It's like, why can't we do that? You know, we put up a tile on social media and we don't get 7 million. Like, we wish we could. And the reality is it takes a lot of work to get to the point where you can out-organize these liberals, you know. And in Australia, it's like the union bureaucracy is our equivalent, you know, like they do nothing 99% of the time. They hold things back. And then when they do make a call out, people listen. And there can be a frustration with that. But you can't just declare that the people who follow the unions are worthless. You have to actually fight to win their allegiance to something better.
But it is easier to just say that everyone else is doing the wrong thing.
Yeah,
it's the easier route to take. I'm right.
Yeah, and it's nice. You feel good in your heart.
Definitely.
And everyone else is evil.
Because what we really need in America is a left that could take that 7 million people and push them somewhere, you know, further. America is the heart of global capitalism in the worst way, but it's got this working class where life for people is hard. It's brutal. You can't afford to pay rent. You know, there's hardly any rights. People are losing access to union organizing. All of
living standards are just going backwards at a rate of knots.
And so then there's the question of extreme racism from the police. Donald Trump and the way that he's bearing down upon people's lives, the ICE gangs. So there's stuff there that could be potentially explosive. And if things exploded in America, it would have such an immediate impact on the rest of the world. We saw that with the Black Lives Matter movement and the way that it sparked a global movement for racial justice in Australia, in the United Kingdom, in France. There were big demonstrations around the question of Black Lives Matter. And so, we need not sneering attitudes, but attitudes which is like, it's good people have gotten out on the streets, and it's a sight for sore eyes seeing 7 million people respond to Donald Trump by getting into the streets.
Totally. And the only way to stop these events becoming blips and then everything going back to normal is to fight, to build networks of activists who can keep things going, you know? So the Democrats want to call one thing every 6 months just to keep the electoral fires burning. Okay, well, you go to those things and you say, join this network, join that network, join this organization, whatever. And again, it comes down to building institutions. The Democratic Party, the Labor Party, they have institutions and they use them to mobilize people when they want and to demobilize and to marginalize the left when it tries. Okay, we have to build counter institutions, and it's serious work, you know, but it needs to be done. And there's actually a lot of opportunities to do it right now. Like we got Palestine, we got, you know, the far right in America, here in Australia, with climate change is still a thing. Like LGBT rights explode every now and again with some appalling statement or attack by politicians. So there's lots of things to campaign around. There's no shortage of protests in Melbourne, that's for sure, and all around the world, really. Every other month there's just record-breaking events of protest. So the thing is the left accumulating people so that these inspirational moments don't get wasted and co-opted and neutralized? Because, you know, Brian makes the point that at these rallies, there are people who love Kamala Harris. Yeah, totally. But then there's also people who've been protesting for Palestine. There's been workers who've been going on strike. So all these people are brought together. Okay, can we find the left of that and build that into something moving forward? That's the challenge. You know?
Yeah. And I think, that's the most annoying part, like with all of this. Like, there'll be like rightful critiques of the liberal politics and stuff that are at the rallies and whatever, but there's never a like, where to from here? What's the concrete next step that we should take to get to what I'm calling for on Twitter?
Yeah, and it takes us back to the question of Mamdani and the sort of tragedy of that, because you can see very clearly in that campaign that there's people who do want to be politically active and be politically organised, and they have the energy and the time to do it. But because there's no like left-wing working class independent party in America, the place where people have to go searching is the Democrats, and that leads them down a dead end.
Yeah, they'll be asked to door knock for corporate Democrats in the midterms next year, absolutely guaranteed. Those email lists are going to be used for that purpose.
Well, should we see if our special guest caller
I wonder who it could be.
is around? Okay, well, hi caller. How are you?
Hello, I'm well.
So our caller today is Josh Lees. Josh is the most wanted man in New South Wales, a serial activist, and someone who's taken on Chris Minns not once, not twice, but 3 times in the court, and has come out on top 2 out of 3 times, I'd say.
Bad.
Not bad.
Pretty good run.
Yeah, the one I lost, I was actually overseas, so, you know.
Blame it on Damien.
Well, Josh, what we were going to start talking about is the question of the anti-fascist protests in Melbourne. Geordie, Omar, and I were at them. Did you see some of the tears in the media in the aftermath?
I saw the cop with a big box of rocks and a lot of love for the Nazi rallies. Yeah,
That's exactly right.
Those were some terrifying rocks. Who knows where those rocks could have been? You know.
Yeah.
They probably broke someone's arm, I heard.
It was quite an incredible display of theatre. Like, it was so dramatic. Like, he walks on stage and it's all quiet, like hush, hush, hush. Like, you can imagine the lights are dimmed and then there's like a spotlight that aims on him. He's got this box and he pours it out and he's like, Melbourne's had a gutful.
It's quite moving.
It was really like that. And it was like the fact, I mean, you know, I don't have that much hair, but like the fact that he's totally bald, he's kind of, he's large, and he's just like a classic Nazi cop, you know, like every movie that's ever been made about the police force being conservative, like this guy was the starring figure, and just went on a rampage praising fascists, racist, anti-immigration activists, and then declaring war on us, basically.
Yeah. I was doing a bunch of media in the aftermath of the demonstration. I was part of organising the rally, the anti-fascist one, to assure the listeners. And the media has learnt a lot of really funny lessons in the fallout from the Palestine movement. One of which is that the main question they should ask people is, do you condemn?
X.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, I just repeatedly, all of these journalists being like, do you condemn the people who threw rocks? And it's just like, what about condemning the Nazis?
Yeah.
Like, they couldn't bring themselves to talk about the far right. Like, none of them wanted to talk about the far right. The only thing they wanted to talk about was like, you know, these blue-haired, you know, lefty crazies fighting the cops on the streets or whatever.
The thing that gets me about that question even more now, 2 years into a genocide, is like, on what planet do these people think they have a moral, you know, high horse to stand on to condemn anyone about anything ever again, when these institutions have just supported the mass murder of Palestinians for 2 years, and they've done everything they could to dehumanize the Palestinians, to constantly, you know, force the Israeli propaganda lines down our TV screens and airwaves. You know, and then they're like, "Oh, do you condemn?" Oh, I'm sorry, like, who are you? Who are you to condemn anything?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if people saw the clip that Jasmine Duff put up on her Instagram page. Jasmine's a member of Victorian Socialists and a Students for Palestine organiser. And she was doing a press conference on October 8, which was the day of the big Palestine 2-year anniversary rally, 2 years of the genocide rally. And Jazz is like talking to this ABC journalist 8 times. This journalist asked, do you condemn Hamas
Graffiti.
and do you condemn graffiti? Like,
Clearly, the graffiti is the main thing that's happened in the last 2 years.
yeah.
In the eyes of these people, you know.
Yeah.
So there is a narrative constructed. The other one is small business in the city.
Oh, yes.
That's really important.
Yeah.
We're all supposed to think about those poor restaurateurs who are paying their workers like sweatshop wages under the counter in cash, avoiding their taxes, charging us all exorbitant fees on our credit card purchases. Like, these are the kind of bleeding hearts that we're supposed to empathize with, rather than any of the actual issues. And it's a very deliberate move, I think, to neutralize the discussion at all. So it works with the Palestine one. Well, they try and do it with the Palestine one, but with the fascist thing, it's the same thing. Like, there's obviously a big crime happening with the far right mobilization and organizing. And that they don't really want to justify it explicitly, but they do it implicitly by just, you know, invisibilizing those crimes and talking about something totally different.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's the same in Sydney, but here, anytime there's an issue, either the Herald Sun or the Age is like, you know, there was these mass protests against Nazis or against, you know, a genocide in Palestine, or even against, like, you know, the government's decision on working from home or whatever. Here's, you know, us talking about the mass protests or the, like, whatever it is. We're just about to do a live cross to a small business owner as the authority on the issue and ask what, you know, inevitably he thinks about the matter. Never someone who's, you know, an anti-fascist or isn't a big fan of genocide. Does that happen in Sydney?
And obviously a small business owner who they've already found who agrees with what
exactly
the answer they want to hear. Because, like, there's heaps of other small business owners who probably love the fact that we bring thousands of people into the city on Sunday to buy their stuff. Actually, like all the cafes and shops that do a roaring trade after and before every Palestine rally that we ever hold. I mean, so yeah, it's obviously just a convenient line for them to try to demonize, and it's obviously can be used against protests about anything. But it is, in that sense, it's similar to the, you know, the protests against the genocide, where again, media have tried very hard, and the whole establishment, to avoid actually talking about the genocide in Gaza, which should be the issue, and instead, you know, try to divert things and make the issue about, whatever, anti-Semitism,
caravans,
violent protesters, or disruption, or how much are we in I don't know, in Victoria, but here one of the constant lines is how much we're costing the government millions of dollars in policing costs, as though it's us who decides to send 100 riot cops to a demo. Like, you know,
keep them at home.
I actually have a game I want to play with you guys, which is a game I prepared earlier, and you guys can't look.
Fair.
Okay, so I've got 2 articles from The Age, independent always. One article was written by chief political fuckhead Chip Legrand, and the other one was written by Philip Dalidakis, a former Labor minister. And so I'm going to read out a paragraph from each of their articles, and I want you guys to guess which one is which. So I'm just going to shuffle these around so Geordie and Omar don't know which one I'm reading first.
My eyes are closed.
Okay. Victoria Police Commander Wayne Cheeseman, with his bald head and forearms the size of Christmas hams, is a sort of no-nonsense cop that we could all use on our local street corner. So when the big cheese declares Melbourne's had a gutful, any politician attuned to the public mood should understand he is speaking not just on behalf of police dodging rocks thrown by left-wing agitators, but a city desperately in need of a break. So
that is clearly a bold right-winger talking about another bold right-winger.
Yeah. Oh, well, no, you're not allowed to guess yet.
Oh.
That sounds like the start of a Batman movie or something. Like,
okay, so that's number one. Okay, and then this is number two. There was a time when Melbourne prided itself on being the most livable city in the world, tolerant, thoughtful, creative, diverse. We wore that badge with pride and spoke of it often with confidence, not arrogance. Ours was a city in which ideas, not ideology, competed, where people could disagree without despising each other. But somewhere along the way, and particularly since the COVID lockdowns, Melbourne has lost its way. So that's number two. So which one is Chipley Fuck and which one is Philip?
The second one was so anodyne. I reckon that's got to be a politician.
Yeah.
I was going to say the opposite. I reckon the opposite.
Okay, so you think two's Chip and one's Philip. Yeah. Omar does one Chip, two Philip.
Yeah.
Geordie?
Like easily one Chip, two Philip. Like the thing is, Chip, like right wingers are kind of funny. Labor ministers are just pathetic. Yeah. Like what the fuck was that?
Oh, Melbourne, we love thee.
Like, yeah.
From sea to shining sea, Melbourne, we salute you, yeah.
Like, shut up.
Okay, well,
the cafe culture. God, it's so good.
Josh, you have a disadvantage because you're in New South Wales.
Around here,
So Omar and Jordan won that round of the game.
I've overestimated the political nous of Chip LeGrand, clearly.
Yeah.
But so there's these commonalities that run through these two articles. And the main thing is what you guys were talking about before, which is it's so sad that all of these small businesses have, lost money. And then the other thing is that there needs to be a curbing on protest, that it's gone too far, that there's been too many protests in the Melbourne CBD. 2 years on, it's been too much. And so Philip's answer to that is to set up protest zones in the city.
Awesome.
Yeah. So if you want to...
Is that like on a broken basketball court on some back street of like East Melbourne?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, basically like the arts precinct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So all the important people will see it.
And then Chipley Grand, his is more novel. He just thinks that we should ban every protest that you could think of for a whole year. We just need
a moratorium on moratorium marches. Yeah.
Scratch a Liberal and what do you find?
Yeah.
But he wants to ban all protests, so that's very even-handed. It's really,
Yeah, the fascists couldn't march either.
Yeah.
But there's actually been a campaign, like the Melbourne City Council has been campaigning pretty much for this as well, that every protest in Melbourne has to be approved, not just by the police or something, but by them.
Yeah.
So these people who are elected, mostly by business votes.
Yeah, and landlords.
Exactly. Like they should get to determine whether we can have a democratic protest or not. Like it's quite an extraordinary campaign. So it's not just the media or the cops. Like there's been a wide-ranging campaign against the Sunday protests for Palestine and now this one too.
Yeah, if anyone remembers who Gillian Segal is, the so-called anti-Semitism envoy, so like the key figure in the pro-Israel lobby.
Minister for
you remember
Israel,
months and months ago, she and others in the pro-Israel lobby came out and said openly that Palestine rallies should be banned from the entirety of the CBD. I remember she was talking about just Sydney or nationally. And that was, we can kind of laugh that off, but that was like a serious proposal that they were putting to government, claiming that we were, terrifying all Jews and denying their right to enter Sydney and so on. Absolutely ludicrous. And then but Chris Minns, I mean, he didn't try to introduce an explicit ban on all protests in the CBD, but he has been trying to stop protests here, consistently. And part of that was these new anti-protest laws recently that they passed here, which maybe we'll talk about in a second. But yeah, so this is like a serious threat, I think, which we need to confront by protesting even more. And this idea that there's too many protests, like, I'm sorry, stop doing fucked up things then.
Yeah.
Supporting a genocide, and they don't try to ban the Nazi rallies. Like here in New South Wales, they've taken us to court consistently to ban our protests. They haven't once tried to ban the Nazis marching on the streets who are openly calling for, fascism, and many of them openly denying the Holocaust and all the rest of it. So, yeah, it's bad, and we will fight it.
Well, one of the things here is they're talking about introducing a permit system. So can you give us a feeling for what that's like, having that in Sydney?
Yeah, so there's an interesting history. So, one of the main problems is that police have powers here to...
That is the fundamental problem.
Yeah, they've got powers and guns. And, to charge you with offences for things like blocking traffic, walking on footpaths, blocking, roads and traffic and all the rest of it. It's called the Summary Offences Act here. And there's no automatic exemption to those powers for protest action, for marches on the streets, even marches on the footpath and all the rest of it. So these are the laws which police can always just use. Yeah, and they don't say, oh, we're banning your protest. They say, oh, no, but you're blocking this, therefore we can charge you with something and attack you for it. Now, there was a slight victory won against these powers, actually with the first Mardi Gras in Australia back in 1978, and the aftermath of that, where there was a big movement to demand our right to protest. Because if people don't know, the first Mardi Gras in Australia in 78 was actually brutally attacked by the police. People were beaten, had the shit beaten out of them, all the rest of it. And anyway, coming out of that, there were some exemptions and this new permit system introduced. So in some ways it was a little step forward, which meant that protesters, we now have the great right where we get to notify police a week in advance. We get to notify police if we plan to march on the street. And if we do that, then we are now immune from the Summary Offences Act. So they can no longer just, charge you with walking on the road or whatever. So that's what the kind of permit system is. And if they want to stop it, then they have to take us to the Supreme Court. So that's what happened with the Harbour Bridge March. That's why we were in court about that. We put in our permit. They took us to court. On that occasion, we won. More recently, we tried to do the same with the Opera House. On that occasion, we lost. Yeah. So that's kind of how the permit system works. But there's lots of problems with it. Obviously, even the idea that the police should get to challenge your right to march on the street at any time is wrong. And of course, you can never know what the judge is going to be like what the political atmosphere is going to be like, if you're going to win or not those cases. And then one of the other big problems is often you have to call a protest without 7 days notice.
Exactly.
Because whatever, Israel's just launched another massacre, or Nazis have just announced they're marching on the street, or for whatever reason. And if you don't have that 7 days notice, then the onus is on you. If the police oppose your march, we're meant to take the police to the Supreme Court to get an injunction against their, all this shit. So it just puts up a lot of barriers, obviously, to being able to protest, and a lot of, just ties up your time and resources in bloody courts and all the rest of it, which obviously is kind of what they want. Yeah.
I bet you're pretty familiar with the layout of the Supreme Court now.
At this point.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, you're an experienced leftist and an organizer, so you kind of have the confidence to confront this stuff. But I remember when I was in Sydney years ago, a lot of the time, the people in charge of organizing a rally were much more naive, just new to activism. And it's great they're trying to call a rally. And so the idea of taking the police to court, paying costs potentially, like it's all very scary. So basically, it's a police veto over activism. And unless and regularly the left used to concede, like softer left kind of type people would concede and give up their rights in the face of police challenge, even if you maybe could win in the court. So it's just a massive anti-democratic hurdle, and it's an act of intimidation.
Yeah, that's right. And of course, even if you think you might win in court, can you find a lawyer? Do you have the time and resources? if you have to work that day and the cops like challenge you and you have like 12 hours and then you're in the Supreme Court, you know, like if you're lucky, you have overnight notice. So it's like, yeah, if you're just some person trying to call a rally and you don't have a whole team and, you know, then you're pretty screwed, and they just intimidate people into, you know, backing down or whatever. And so there's this constant haggling over all of that, balance of power and so on. And yeah.
And I remember when I was in Sydney, like the police there, because of all this power, they're massively more aggressive than in Melbourne.
Oh, they
like,
are.
Like
Yeah.
Melbourne recently has become a bit more hardcore, but like all the protests we used to organize, like the police would, even if we had a form one, they would just push us off the street, ban us from getting on the road, assault people, like just all the time people being arrested for just doing nothing. And maybe they'd be released just afterwards or whatever. But it was a much more aggressive, and the riot cops were just always deployed first thing, you know, no traffic cop bullshit like in Melbourne, like straight away the big boys chewing gum like they're on drugs or whatever.
Yeah.
And so that's the kind of thing, like they get the idea in their heads that they control protesting, which thankfully to this point is not really the vibe in Melbourne.
Yeah, but that's changing. Like New South Wales, Queensland, historically goon cops. Like that's the thing. Like New South Wales has a very notorious Raptor squad, which was, you know, flown down here to
land forces.
to do land forces, and it's just like either, you know, these giant hulking men with anger issues or these tiny little men with anger issues as well, who are somehow more
We
overtly...
still like little men on this podcast. It's okay.
Yeah.
Some of us are little men, but yeah.
But like, yeah, just like overt anger issues. And then over here, like our government's response was like, well, our cops are not mean enough, so we've got to change the colour of their uniforms to like a darker, more aggressive blue, and you know, start giving them more shields and more guns and shit like that.
Well, some
because
of the weapons that they have
It's
is just
insane.
incredible. Like they're like for the last couple of years, the cops have been learning more and more about how to use the new weapons that they got given by the state government. They've got stinger grenades that release like shrapnel up to waist height. They have like what resemble automatic rifles with capsicum pellets in them. They have flashbang grenades. They have these grenade things that release like a capsicum sort of gas sort of thing out into the air. And then what they call foam batons, which are the...
Foam, yeah.
Yeah, which are those rubber bullets that have metal inside of them.
Yeah.
And so these fucking cops, they just stand there and it's like... You know that they've got their hands at the ready to aim these quite powerful weapons on you. Weapons, by the way, which, yeah, like I said to the media, Amnesty International has said should be banned because they're basically protest torture devices, is the way that Amnesty International describes them.
Yeah, and like they had to change what they were called, like the police used to call them non-lethal rounds or whatever, and it's like, no, you have to call them less lethal now because they can still kill you. And like those foam baton things, like it's literally a grenade launcher, but instead of a grenade it has a rubber and metal thing that can kill people.
Have they got those in Josh? Have they got those in Sydney, Josh?
They've certainly got all these things as far as I'm aware. They haven't unleashed them on us that much. But partly because we haven't had the same level of kind of confrontation with the far right at our rallies recently. But yeah, I remember when they were first introducing all this stuff, though, even pepper spray, which now is like, pepper spray, what's that? You know, it's nothing.
First step.
But even when they first introduced that, it was all justified according to like, oh, well, it's either that or we shoot people. You know, we'll only use this in extreme situations when otherwise we would have had to kill them. So this is like supposedly a more humane thing, but of course it's all bullshit. As soon as the cops have their toys, you know, they're going to use them and normalize them, you know, and that's what's happened, you know. And so yeah, it's why it's important to be against arming the police with more and more weapons, because they're obviously going to use them against the protesters and against the left. It's the main point of the police existing after all. So yeah.
Like these stun grenades are terrifying. Like it sounds like you're being bombed.
Yeah.
And like on this weekend, I was sort of personally accustomed to it because we'd had it like at land forces. But when I first heard them at land forces, it's like, what
Whoa.
the fuck has just happened?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, I mean, to be fair, you do say, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Maybe we can play a clip of the video, Omar
it's good.
externalizing his thoughts to the crowd.
Well, it was very random. But the for the punters who've just turned up for the first time, it literally sounds like you're in a war zone, and it's designed to clear people, and there was no possible risk to police at that moment. It was just like, we've had enough, and we want to get rid of you guys. And so this idea that it's a defense mechanism or it's actually an enabler of democratic rights because it's just a last resort mechanism short of the ultimate violence, it actually just curtails and empowers these people who, by nature, by political instinct, are just so anti-left. You know? And that Nazi cop basically he didn't even try and hide it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in that video that Omar's talking about, he's like emceeing the rally, and then like kind of all this stuff unfolds just in front of him, like from a little vantage point. It is quite funny hearing the internal monologue be displayed over a loudspeaker. But we were like, they're just cops doing cop things. Like this is like almost hardly provoked or completely unprovoked. And then I can't remember who it was, like a Labor minister or like a police commissioner or whatever. They were like, no, to get the cops to spray you with pepper spray, you have to be right under their noses, kind of thing. And it's like we have footage. Like there's footage in that moment that Omar is talking about where a cop is like spraying someone
Charging.
like 5 meters, like running at them 5 meters away, spraying him, and having to get like pulled back by another cop to be like, actually, mate, come back. We're about to throw a grenade. Please.
We got bigger fish to fry here.
Yeah.
Like it's insane.
The thing is, like, the more that people can see the world is fucked up, and the less legitimacy and support these political parties and governments have, the more they're relying on these kind of devices. And we saw that with the climate movement.
Yeah.
Like, we've got comrades who've been arrested just for sitting on roads, and stuff like that. The Harbour Bridge thing. So they're getting more repressive, so I think we need to factor that in when thinking about our organising. As Josh said before, like, yes, we have to resist and continue to organise in the face of this stuff, but we also need to be smart and think seriously about what we're doing at the demonstrations, and that's something that the anti-fascist left in Melbourne is having to grapple with quite seriously. I think we can't afford to be totally blasé about it all.
Yeah, because I guess one of the questions is, how do we actually think we can push back against the far right? Because the key thing was that there was a far right demonstration in Melbourne CBD. The police facilitated a far right march, down part of Burke Street, cleared out the left in order to be able to do that. But then how do you actually push back against the far right? Well, I would say that you need a confident, united movement that can overwhelm the far right on the streets with numbers. And to do that, we need to bring lots of people into our movement. That doesn't, and so we want to politically confront them. We want them to be able to see us and hear us telling them that they're Nazis and, that their politics won't be tolerated. But that's a sort of different, I guess, approach than sort of an approach of you can individually confront the far right with sort of like, individual sort of force. And so I think a collective approach to fighting the far right will be a better one in terms of actually winning against them.
And a disciplined one, yeah. But hey, Josh, can you tell us about because you guys have is it a weapons conference or something happening in Sydney?
Yeah, it's messed up. So in 2 weeks' time, so this is kicking off on Tuesday, the 4th of November, there's a thing called the Indo-Pacific 2025 Expo, being officially hosted and sponsored by the New South Wales government and by the Australian Navy and a host of other kind of government defence-related organisations, and co-sponsored with the weapons companies. And at this expo is going to be all the big names in war crimes. So all the companies you may have heard of, Elbit Systems, Rafael, two of the biggest Israeli weapons companies, and then all the big international ones that build the F-35 fighter bombers and everything else, Lockheed Martin, a bunch of great Aussie homegrown weapons companies like Drone Shield, who boast about, that their weapons are being used in Gaza as well. Thales, like all the ones with links to our universities as well. So, and they're all going to be literally like selling their wares, like they're going to have stalls to spruik their weapons. And we know that they advertise their weapons as battle tested because they've been used in Gaza. They've been used to slaughter children, to massacre journalists, kill doctors left, right, and centre. So this event is being officially hosted by the New South Wales government 2 years after a genocide, when even the most minimal, obviously we're skeptical about, that international law's done nothing to stop a genocide and so on. But, Australia is a signatory to the Genocide Convention. Australia officially does say it supports the International Court of Justice findings and so on, which says explicitly that there is a plausible genocide in Gaza, that states have an obligation to act to prevent that. And here's our government hosting a weapons fair for all these arms companies that have just massacred 70,000 plus people in Gaza, and who besides Gaza are, of course, planning for bloody World War III with China and spending billions of dollars on that shit instead of on what we need. So, we're planning a blockade.
Good one.
Of that arms fair. There's been plenty of protests targeting weapons companies and targeting this kind of thing in the past, and good on all those people, and we've supported lots of them. The thing we're trying to do for this one is to make it a really mass event. So we're going to see, and who knows, but our goal is let's try and get 1,000 people down there. Let's try and get more if we can, for the same reason that you were just talking about. Like, in order to stand up to things like this and to be able to, hold our ground against the police, we're going to need big numbers to say this event is absolutely abhorrent. It's criminal. The people hosting this event are war criminals. They're the ones who should be locked up and arrested. This is a chance to kind of highlight all those ongoing connections between our government and these weapons companies and the genocide in Gaza.
Well, maybe this time, Josh, Victoria Police will come up to you guys instead of the New South Wales
and
Police
bring their
coming
toys.
down.
They'll bring their toys.
That'd be a big bald cop with his bulging biceps.
Ham. Christmas ham. That's great. I mean, I feel like we're in a bit of a Christmas theme here today. It's great decorations.
Christmas.
Yeah.
Josh, before you go, I got a question to ask you. On the weekend, thousands of far-right racists gathered in Melbourne, facilitated by the police. Their Nazi kind of core was exposed, and police were a bit upset. I just want to know, before you go, do you condemn rocks?
I condemn rocks in all their forms. No, I unconditional but critical support for rocks. I don't know what to say about that. Depends which way the rocks are flying.
No, you can't go yet, because you haven't told us about winning against Chris Minns in the courts. He wanted to ban protests in some places. This is our latest pretty significant victory. Like, it's not very often that we do actually win these constitutional challenges against anti-protest laws. But that's what we did. So, Minns and the New South Wales government here passed a whole new series of anti-protest laws. One of them was about saying that anyone who protests in or near a place of worship, that the police would have the powers to move them on, if they were deemed to be even just like obstructing anyone. And so this didn't have to be a protest that was actually targeting the place of worship or anyone worshipping. It could be even if that church or whatever was closed, there was no one in there, and there was just a pedestrian walking by who you were deemed to be obstructing. Like, that's how broad these laws were written, and near wasn't defined, any of that. So the point was, this was a new set of laws which the police could have used to pretty much ban protests anywhere, because basically everywhere in the city is near a place of worship. There's churches everywhere. Every significant park, square where you hold protests is near a place of worship. So, Minns was warned at the time, because there was a lot of opposition to these laws when he tried to ram them through. And then he lost in the Supreme Court, which said that these are invalid. It's significant too, because Minns rammed these laws through on the back of, remember, this whole furphy about
tidal
a supposed
wave of anti-Semitism.
A supposed anti-Semitism crisis, which of course was actually engineered by a criminal conspiracy who was doing things like the Dural caravan hoax and so on. And Minns knew that was all of this criminal con job, but didn't tell anyone until after he'd rushed the laws through the New South Wales Parliament, and then spent months afterwards still like just lying. So
Yeah.
that's the other thing they've been exposed about is just cooking their stats, saying that there were 700 anti-Semitic attacks over the summer, and then like, oh, actually, it's all bullshit. Like included in their statistics are heaps of attacks on Palestine supporters.
That's right. I saw
But then the
that.
cops have just put it in the category of like anti-Semitism.
Unbelievable.
And all kinds of stuff like that. So
And the motive of the Dural stuff as well, that like the police were like the motive was to get us to change our laws. And then Chris Minns is like, all right, we're changing the laws.
yeah.
But seriously, like we were supposed to believe
Yeah.
that there was this caravan full of explosives and there was just a note on top with the
Yeah.
address of a synagogue. And we're supposed to believe this is a serious attempt. Like it was ridiculous. It was such a setup from the beginning.
Yeah. It's so obvious that it makes you think like, was Chris Minns part of the criminal conspiracy?
And the entire media, honestly.
Well,
it's
no,
really-
haven't you heard it's Iran? That's what they said later. And who the
Yeah,
fuck?
true.
They
I
haven't
forgot
given us
about
any
that.
evidence to say.
Yeah.
Trust
Yeah,
me.
Iran really benefited from the
Yeah.
heightened attention given to Israel in the positive sense. Yeah.
Well, it's really important that you guys won in New South Wales, Josh, because, in Victoria, there's this real push going on by basically the entire media class, the Liberal Party, and as Omar talked about before, the Melbourne City Council, run by a guy who's in the Labor Party or closely tied into them. And these people want to introduce permit systems to, make it harder for people to protest. But also, Jacinta Allen has previously talked about introducing similar laws to the ones that Chris Minns did about banning protests near places of worship, which in Melbourne would mean that you couldn't protest in the city at all. Across the road from the State Library, which is where we start nearly every single one of our protests, is a church. That Flinders Street Station is across from a church. Like, it would mean that protests couldn't be in the CBD. So the fact that you guys have won in New South Wales, I think, helps to, maintain just the modicum of democracy that we still have in Victoria.
And I think we cannot be complacent at all about it here because, like, for now, Jacinta Allen's saying that she's not going to do it, but the pressure is mounting.
Massively.
And, the Labor Party, for God's sake. So you wouldn't expect them to have much of a backbone moving forward about this. So we've got to be clear and organised and mobilised to keep defending our rights.
That's it. Well,
Yeah, and I think as well, like these things are political battles, because obviously on this occasion we were able to win it through a constitutional challenge, which, as I said, is pretty rare.
Yeah.
You certainly can't rely on that. The key thing, which means you might win that constitutional challenge, maybe, but also the key thing is to keep building like mass movements and protests that are prepared to defy these laws if they do pass them, prepared to stand up to them, and always trying to build support for the things you're protesting about. And that was one of the things here. So this challenge was spearheaded by the Palestine Action Group, but behind us and with us we had LGBTI campaign organisations, environmental campaign organisations, some unions and so on. And we're always trying to make an argument that what we're standing for is, the rights of anyone to protest about anything. And that matters because it comes down to what you were alluding to before about how do we defeat the police repression and so on. It's about numbers, it's about a mass movement, and it is about trying to win public support for what we're doing to make it harder and harder for the politicians and the cops and the courts to just openly, strip away our rights and everything. So, yeah.
Well, I feel like that's a good advertisement for people to get involved in organising in left-wing politics, in socialist politics. Josh is a member of the New South Wales Socialists, and we want everyone who's listening to become a member of the Socialist Party in their state. We're obviously members of Victorian Socialists, but we think it's super important that our movement continues to build, continues to grow. In WA, the West Australian Socialists were just part of their ran the council election campaign. They formed 6 months ago and they're already placing second in a council race.
24%.
I think, in the seat of Canning. So there's something there and we want people to be part of it so that we can go from, placing second to placing first. So help us.
That would be good.
Help us be number one. Get involved. Follow the podcast, We're going to set up the Patreon so you guys can help support us.
Any day now, Annika. Any day now.
So, share the podcast with your friends and remember to always follow the party line.
Oh, my darling, oh, my darling, oh, my darling party line. Oh, I never will forsake thee, for I love this life of mine.